culture's diversity is reflected in its rich tapestry of landscapes, cuisines, and customs. Over 5 millennia, waves of immigrants have woven into its population, creating a composite identity. Languages define us, define our cultures and the world around us. Imagine if you were the last person on earth that spoke your language. How would you make sure that it stayed alive? When we see this tragedy happening, it is heart-rending. Like the last Bow woman in the Andamans, who was talking with birds just because there was nobody else around. Or like the Majhi language in Sikkim, which had just 4 speakers left in 2011, and all 4 died in 2017. The language is gone, and that makes it more tragic because it is more tangible. Languages are born and they die like changes in the atmosphere. But when it happens in front of us with the death of its last speaker, the silence of a language turns into a spectacle. It becomes dramatic.
भाषा बनती है संस्कृति से और संस्कृति बनती है भाषा से। मुहावरा प्रचलित है जिसका अर्थ ये होता है कि हर 16 किलोमीटर पर बोली बदल जाती है। जो लोग उसको बोलते हैं उस समूह के जो जनजीवन है, संस्कृति है, रहन सहन है, उनके जीने का जो ढंग है, वो सब उनकी भाषा में आता है।
Language is a very, very important tool for communication. When they get extinct, it's a man-made phenomena. Languages don't die of their own death.
Since the time some of us worked on the World Atlas for Endangered Languages in 2009, because mapping the endangered languages of the world is not a matter of joke. World Atlas survey actually told us that we are on top of the list of endangered languages. That was a big alarm bell for us.
If you roughly see the number of languages which are spoken in India and recognizing only 18 and 22 by now, it's some kind of disparity which will definitely pose a big question in front of you, is that why some languages are important and why the other languages are not important.
In 2001, as per the world estimate, the world is having about 6,700 languages. Further, in 2003, during a study, it was observed that maybe in few years, we may be losing half of these languages by domination by the prominent languages. 40% out of this 6,700 languages may be under endangerment.
Language endangerment is a reality, and the world is facing the language endangerment, and especially this is a very critical issue for smaller communities, oral communities especially, which do not have a written script.
Whenever a language dies, we are losing many things. One of them is that there is the sense of identity that is associated with the language. You know, I am the language and the language is me.
Nothing new is happening in that language. Neither literature is created nor information is generated. And the use of that language gradually dies down. Because language is like a river. It flows and other streams also join and enrich that. That should be the flow of a language. And that only happens when we keep on using that language.
So the way to preserve endangered languages, to restore that knowledge, is first of all to preserve the people, their habitats, their way of life, which of course will change with modernity. So that is what we want, is equality and democracy to reach every individual.
In the 1961 census, the number of mother tongues listed were 1,652. In the 1971 census, the list dramatically reduced to only 109 names. More than 1,500 names were removed in just a decade because a language with less than 10,000 speakers stopped being registered in the official census survey after 1971.
आज आज़ादी के बाद दुर्भाग्य की बात यह है कि संविधान सभा में जब ये तय हुआ कि 15 साल बाद हिंदी राष्ट्रभाषा हो जाएगी और दूसरी जो मान्यता प्राप्त भाषाएं हैं उनको फलने फूलने का अवसर मिलेगा। जो मेरी जानकारी है 22 तो भाषाएं हैं जो मान्यता प्राप्त हैं, लेकिन 39 ऐसी भाषाएं हैं जो मान्यता की कतार में खड़ी है।
In India, if you look at the 1901 census onwards, you'll find the rate of bilingualism is very high. So for a smaller language community, it will be very difficult for them to survive if they speak, know, use only their language. So they are forced to learn the language of the region, the language of the market, the language of law courts, and the language of administration, to be able to survive.
When the linguistic states were created, people who spoke a certain language mostly belonged to that state. But because of migration and urbanization, we have now cities which have speakers of numerous languages staying together. In Delhi, there would easily be more than 400 languages spoken by different groups, sizable groups. They have come from the Himalayan states, they have come from Bihar and Orissa, they also come from the south, and they come from Punjab, Haryana and Rajasthan to Delhi. The census authorities had to put number of speakers of 66 other languages in the basket of Hindi.
What is Hindi? There are two kinds of questions. Where is Hindi spoken? Then you can say, well, it is spoken in UP, it is spoken in Bihar, it is spoken in Rajasthan. But then somebody will say, no, in Bihar, it is Bhojpuri or it is Maithili. The language Hindi exists in so many of its speech varieties. And one of the speech varieties, when it becomes important or becomes important for certain reasons, that speech variety becomes what we call later the standard language. Then we give it the name and we put it to various official uses, cultural uses, other uses.
भले वो हिंदी होगी, भले ही वो भोजपुरी होगी, विदेशों में उन्होंने भोजपुरी को बचा करके रखा है, लेकिन यहाँ पर जो लोग अपने गांव से शहर आ जाते हैं वो भोजपुरी को भूल जाते हैं। ऐसी सहायता मिले कि हाँ उस बोली को जीवित रखा जा सके, और ये तभी संभव है जब आप कोई बोलियों का एटलस बनाने का प्रयास करें।
The UNESCO New Delhi office, in collaboration with the Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts, has taken up a project called Preparation of Updated List of Tribal Indigenous Languages in Select States of India. In its journey of seeking a holistic worldview articulated through Indian traditions by documenting and preserving linguistic diversity. Professor Ramesh C. Gaur, head Kalanidhi, and Dean IGNCA, was nominated by the Government of India to represent India in the UNESCO Global Task Force.
UNESCO decided to celebrate 2019 as a year of indigenous languages. There is a need to have more awareness, more concerns about endangerment. So in 2020, a global task force was constituted to celebrate this decade as a International Decade of Indigenous Languages.
UNESCO has reported, at least has brought out in the very first page of effort which can be put in order to promote the mother tongues across the globe. It is very surprising that the report says that 40% of the population of the world do not get to be educated in the language that they speak. So a child who comes out of the house or from his community, he has to immediately adapt to a system where he has to learn a language which he doesn't speak or she doesn't speak at home.
UNESCO has come out with the list, and the list says that if you have less than 10,000 speakers, and that language will be in the endangered list. The languages in Assam, West Bengal, at the same time in Maharashtra, in Himachal Pradesh, Jammu Kashmir, there are different places the languages are endangered. The reason because of this endangered language is because we are not giving enough opportunity to those language, to those people for that matter.
The Western thought or the Eurocentric view is that the language is spoken by few people, it will die, of course. No, it won't. Java is still thriving. Onge is still thriving. Nicobarese, the two languages, Luro and Sanenyo, which the United UNESCO had declared endangered, are no longer endangered. I visited them myself and I spent so much time. You know why they are not endangered, though they are spoken by a handful of people? Because they take pride in their language.
So we have large number of languages. They are classified into 5 language families according to their syntactic features and according to their phonology, their sound system, and their arrangement, grammatical arrangement of words to form utterances or sentences.
You know, the languages of India, all of them actually belong to 6 various distinct language families. One is Indo-European, or the part of Indo-European is known as Indo-Aryan, which is represented in India, and the other is Dravidian, the third is Tibeto-Burman, fourth is Austro-Asiatic, fifth is Tai-Kadai, and sixth is Great Andamanese. And there are traces of the 7th language family tucked in Andaman known as Ang, which is represented by Onge and Jarawa.
And if you notice the world atlas, looking at all over India, you will find the red spots. All these languages are usually spoken by very tiny segment of population. So when only small segment of population speaks it and others are unable to understand or process them, then what becomes the value of that language?
Our journey took us to Ladakh, a remote region known for its stunning landscapes and its unique culture and architecture. Here too, the languages like Balti, Broksat, Ladakhi, Urgi, Shina, and Zanskari all have found their way into the list of endangered languages.
There are about 191 languages of nomadic communities in the country. They are all very severely dilapidated.
The Gujri language, spoken by the Gujjar communities in the northern Himalayan states, has endured historical challenges, yet its folk literature thrives with songs, tales, and proverbs reflecting their nomadic way of life.
जितने गुजर है यहाँ पर ये राजस्थान के हैं। जैसे हमारी भाषा जो है ये गोजरी भाषा, हिंदुस्तान में जितनी भाषाएं बोली जाती है, हिंदी है, उर्दू है या पंजाबी है, डोगरी है, उस भाषा से हमारी जो ख़ास करके हमारी भाषा है ये मिलती जुलती है, क्योंकि कश्मीरी भाषा हमारी भाषा से नहीं जुड़ती, लद्दाखी भी नहीं जुड़ती। घूमते घूमते तो ज़िंदगी हमारे दादों परदादों से हमारी गुज़र चुकी है, तो हमारे दिल में अचानक एक ऐसा एहसास पैदा हुआ कि हम इस पेशे को तर्क नहीं करेंगे, मगर इस आने जाने को तर्क करके एक जगह में किसी जगह सेट हो जाएं, ताकि हमारे बच्चे भी पढ़ें, कल को ये भी इन शहरियों के साथ मिलकर शहरी बने।
Today, the once vibrant Gujri language is on the verge of extinction, with no one to teach and no school to go to.
इन पहाड़ों में अगर आप जाके यहाँ का सरवा करेंगे, बकरियाँ मिलेंगी आपको, 2-2, 3-3 आदमी साथ में मिलेंगे चराने वाले। द्रास के आसपास में आपने कितने डेरे देखे। अगर वहाँ रोड के किनारे पर स्कूल दिया जाए, टीचर मौके पर दिया जाए, क्या वो बच्चे नहीं पढ़ सकते? पढ़ेंगे ये, मगर इनको कोई पढ़ाए तो।
The hilly state of Himachal Pradesh too faces a pressing challenge. Has 7 indigenous languages, Baghati, Handuri, Kullui, Kinnori, Pangvalli, Sirmori and Spiti are on the brink of extinction.
इकरे खोला नो दे मेलका पाए मुड़ा मेलका पाए।
इस गांव में ऐसा है, यहाँ पर हर घर में आपको सांचा मिलेगा, हर घर में आपको पंडित मिलेगा। ये हमारे कर्मकांड अपनी भाषा में है ना, हमारे मुहूर्त सारे अपनी भाषा में हैं, और हमारे पूरा वास्तुकर्म हमारे अपनी भाषा में है। ज्योतिष में जितना भी है वो सब हमारा अपनी भाषा में विद्यमान है। क्योंकि हम कश्मीर से आए हैं, ऐसा कहते हैं कि कश्मीर से एक रानी थी ब्याही हुई जैसलमेर राजा के साथ, उसके साथ हम भी जैसलमेर आए थे, और तब से ये प्रकाश वंश शुरू हुआ। इस प्रकार से वो लिपि भी हमारी साथ आई। अब बच्चा हिंदी में ही बोलता है, अब उनको हमारी भाषा का पता नहीं रहता, लेकिन जब घर आते हैं तो हम उनको अपनी भाषा में बात करते हैं, फिर वो कोशिश करते हैं और सीख जाते हैं अपनी भाषा।
जिस चानड़ा लोए हमें बोलो घरा घाटा दे, चिट्टे तेरे कापड़ू रे बेईमान दुनिया वो जिन्हें हमें मिलने देखो है।
हमारी संस्था चाहो जे बगाटी बोली लुप्त लग रही उन्हें एक किसी बचावनी एते बचावने की खातर हमारी जो संस्था प्रयास करो, उसके तेरे बारे में जो तीन विचार है उसे हम सामने रखूँ। अभी जो मैंने अपना परिचय दिया कि सोलन की जो बघाटी बोली यहाँ की बोलते हैं ये लुप्त होने जा रही है, जैसा कि विद्वानों का विचार है।
हमारी भाषा की तो सिर्फ 10% है। अब उसको जो भाषा का प्रयोग करने के लिए वहाँ पर अध्यापक भी तो होना चाहिए। गरीब के बच्चों को जो है वो पहाड़ी सिखाओ जी, क्यों सिखाओ भाई, उसको तो पहले ही पहाड़ी आती। अगर हम लोगों ने इस चीज को जो है वो कायम रखना है यार, तो ये तो ऊपर से नीचे तक होगा जी।
Earlier surveys of NCERT school surveys showed that about 72 of our languages were being used in medium of instruction, at least at the primary level. So whereas the NEP 2020 tells us to include more and more mother tongues into the school system, but the practical problem is that where do you have material in those languages? Where are the teachers in those languages?
Scenario is changing, and there is, as you are aware perhaps, that the national education policy has given a lot of emphasis on using the home language for teaching children, at least up to a certain stage, primary education, so that the child is able to bring the richness of the perception of the world into the learning system. And then, of course, there will be a transition to the bigger languages. It's like beginning the education in the local language, and then maybe the state language, and then English. So that is how the education system has been theoretically planned, but in practice, somehow that has not happened.
The landlocked states of northeast India are characterized by lush green valleys, rolling hills, and diverse ecosystems. Each of the 7 states is home to unique ethnic communities with distinct cultures and languages.
हिमालय की तराई में जम्मू कश्मीर से लेकर के और उधर बिल्कुल सिक्किम और अरुणाचल के बॉर्डर और नागालैंड तक जो लोग रहते हैं उनकी बोलियां लुप्त हो रही हैं.
The Tibeto-Burman languages reside in the Himalayan ranges, and most of the northeast are represented by Tibeto-Burman languages. Tai-Kadai is also in the same area, and Arunachal and Assam are the 2 states which represent the Tai-Kadai languages.
Apart from Assamese and Bodo, which are the official languages, the other indigenous languages in Assam are of Tibeto-Burman origin and are directly connected to Bodo. Assam also has a group of 6 Tai-Kadai languages, a dialect spoken by the people of Southeast Asia and China. 2 of them, Tai Ahom and Tai Turung, have already been reported to be extinct, while Tai Kamyang has less than 50 speakers.
We need to understand the nature of the Northeast. Northeast represents a specific case of the diversity, where you find languages belonging to as many as 4 language families existing together. Most of these minority languages or smaller languages are in an unwritten state. They are used in the spoken form only at home or within the community for their social interaction or general informal communication. So what happens is, when a language is not written down, then the formal mechanisms for its sustainability are not available.
Arunachal Pradesh is the farthest state in the northeastern sector of India and is the only Hindi-speaking state of the region.
अरुणाचल में मैं रहा हूँ और अरुणाचल में मोटे तौर पर बड़ी जनजातियाँ 22 हैं, लेकिन अगर उन जनजातियों को छोटे छोटे हिस्से में बांटें तो वो 250 के करीब आती हैं, और उन 250 जनजातियों की अपनी बोली है और भाषा है.
We have 3 Mishmis, namely the Idumishmi, the Garumishmi and the Mizumishmi. So I belong to the Idumishmis. When we go back to history, the people from my tribe are also supposed to be great warriors. We fought very bravely against the Britishers when they tried to come in to Arunachal. I think we are famous for our costumes, which is like very much in demand amongst the women of Arunachal Pradesh. That is one thing that I pride, being an Idumishmi.
In the Institute, we are not doing pure linguistic research, but we all know that language and culture are intrinsically connected. The ascribed language can be taught only through living in the community rather than living out of the community. The institute is working on some of the smaller languages because most of the threats are again faced by smaller language. Ironically, tribes are categorized as major tribes and minor tribes. There is nothing called major and minor when we talk about tribes, though.
This journey is a continuous process. This was a workshop we had organized focusing on lesser known languages. And the first criteria we took was the paucity of research done on them. Like we didn't have many books written on them. Not many dissertations were written on them. And then also in terms of, in university also, not many people knew about these communities, like the mayors. 2017, 2018, 2019, there was a thorough fieldwork done on by Center for Endangered Languages, and the population was approximately 1200. Conducting thorough field investigation was very important for us to actually get the population also of the speaker, and also to assess to what degree the speakers are not speaking the mother tongue. So a smaller group, again, critically endangered.
There are some communities which have no representation, which is very less in number. If you talk about the Tangams, in the village there are 300 plus, but actual Tangams are 150 people. And they speak a language which is very different from the Adi, though they are within the larger Adi group. Like, for example, in the Adi community, which is composed of various subgroups like the Pailubos, Bokars, and various other smaller groups, the main classroom text which will be used is the Padam Minyong variety, and languages like Tangam or Milangs, these are not represented in the process. And these languages are very rich if you look at in the language of Northeast.
I belong to the Apatani community and I come from the Zero Valley. We have three languages or three variations of Apatani. One which is used by the common people, then the second which is used by the shamans, the Nibus, and then the third by those who are the speakers of the Mijimigu. The shamanistic language which is sung by the shamans during the festivals or rituals. Basically, the language is very different from what a commoner can understand. Only those who have the natural gift of being a shaman can understand the language. It's a very sacred one, a very holy one.
Documentation is fine, but then when we talk about in terms of implementation in school and other institutions, in education system, then there comes a little problem, because there we have to choose one language. So which one to choose is another issue, like choosing one language over the others. So use it or lose it. If you don't use it, then you're going to lose one day.
The loss of language profoundly impacts our identity. Languages serve as a vital link to our communities, ancestors, and cultural heritage. When communities experience the erosion of their ancestral languages, it can result in significant social challenges, including a loss of identity, diminished confidence, and a severed connection to one's origins and future.
जमाने से चला आ रहा है कि हम केवल अंग्रेजी से अपना काम चलाते हैं, या फिर एक कॉमन लैंग्वेज हमने बना लिया असमीज, तो उनसे काम चलाते हैं, और थोड़ा बहुत हिंदी से काम चलाते हैं.
Some languages, as the international experts say, assume the role of killer languages. So what happens is the bigger languages are so attractive in terms of today's survival, self-promotion, getting better jobs. So it is always lure the smaller language speakers into their fold. And there is then begins the shift of identity. And as they shift to the other language, their knowledge and ability or memory of their own mother tongue becomes weaker and weaker.
Okay, is this like Apua? Yes, sort. Okay.
Toto is also one of the endangered language list. And recently, you will be amazed to see that this person, Dhaniram Toto, now he is getting Padma Shri Award this year. So there was no script of that language. So Dhaniram Toto, he himself invented the script.
It is the A. Oh, it is different. The other
Started creating literature, and also his community members also came along with Dhaniram Toto.
The community resides in Indo-Bhutan border area of Alipurduar district. If you see previous census report, 1991 926, 201 reported 1184 population, not speaker. Population is increasing, so the language is safe. It may not be true. Using certain language in home domain is very much important. It doesn't matter that language is Bengali, that language is any other scheduled languages of India.
All coastal communities have lost their languages because they are pushed inward. The Kharwa community in Gujarat, for instance, had such an impressive list of fish names, all gone. They just don't know how to identify the fish in the sea anymore. And there are nearly 250 odd languages spoken by coastal communities in the country. All but a few have gone completely.
Decimation of populations is one of the biggest criteria. I don't think it's one of the biggest criteria in South Asia. We have more than 800 languages still surviving in this country, which were never written down. So, that brings me to the point of oral tradition. Oral tradition or orality is a very significant factor in preserving a language, in sustaining a language, in giving credibility to the community, its culture. Once the oral tradition is lost, there's a cultural amnesia, total amnesia. People will forget what they came, where they came from, what they did, what they stood for, what were their worldviews, what was their faith in, what were their beliefs. All these are embedded in language, in oral tradition.
Aleki jula delam, aleki yuto delam, sar karayo kare idikete duru delam.
Munda languages, which are spoken in Jharkhand and some of the central India, Madhya Pradesh part. And Munda languages are the speakers are the original habitats of India.
एक आदिवासी को, एक इंसान को बचने के लिए क्या क्या चीज़ें जरूरी हो, खास करके आदिवासी समुदाय का एक व्यक्ति को बचने के लिए, एक समुदाय को बचने के लिए जिन चीज़ों की ज़रूरत होती है वो होता है उसका अपनी सांस्कृतिक जमीन से जुड़ा होना, उनके साहित्य को जुड़ा होना.
In the heart of India, the states of Odisha, Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh unfold a rich tribal culture, yet face the critical challenge of language extinction, with 40 tribal languages at risk.
समुदाय के तौर पे जो उनकी संस्कृति है, उनकी जो भाषा है, उनके जो गीत हैं, उनकी जो लोक कथा है, उनके जो पर्व त्योहार हैं, उनकी जो पूजा पद्धतियां हैं, वो उस पे संकट मुझे दिख रहा है. केवल जब आप उससे आप जमीन छीनते हैं तो केवल आप जमीन नहीं छीनते हैं, पूरा सेल्फ आप उसका आप छीन लेते हैं, तो फिर वो चेहरा विहीन व्यक्ति के तौर पे शहर में वो रिक्शा उक्सा चलाता है.
Linguistic experts suggest that tribal languages should be encouraged through innovative cultural and entertainment programs.
हमारी जो संस्था है प्यारा क्रिकेटा फाउंडेशन मदर संस्था है और झारखंडी भाषा साहित्य संस्कृति उसकी एक यूनिट, सेपरेट यूनिट है। तो कई सारे साहित्यकारों ने, कई सारे इंडिविजुअल लोगों ने हमारी मदद की और तब हम लोगों ने 2018 में असुर मोबाइल रेडियो शुरू किया।
The Asur Mobile Radio is the first program of its kind started by the Asur community in 2018 to generate awareness and to create a movement.
असुर रेडियो को काम करने के लिए हमारे मन में इसलिए आया कि हमारे भाषा, साहित्य और सांस्कृतिक दिनों दिन लुप्त होते जा रही है और अभी जो है आधुनिक काल में जब बच्चे लोग सभी दूसरे चीज़ों में भटकते जा रहे हैं, इसीलिए हमने सोचा कि क्यों ना अपना रेडियो ही अपनी भाषा से तैयारी करें।
Yes, radio has pushed and been more inclusive to include more and more mother tongues in its system, but then 176 out of what? So we really don't know how to categorize those other mother tongues. So if you just add 1652 with 1792 or so, roughly 3,500 mother tongues. So if you say 176 are there in the radio system, then you really don't much. You don't have much. You have actually left out a very large number.
The mother tongue is not just the first language a child learns, but it forms an eternal and emotionally profound bond, fostering a sense of pride and connection.
India is very rich in languages. We have, according to the latest census, we have 1,369, they call mother tongues, but they are languages. As we know that languages are repository of big, vast knowledge base and cultural storehouse, we have a large cultural capital here.
There's a new survey which has been started by the Home Ministry called Mother Tongue Survey of India. This Mother Tongue Survey of India, MTSI project, started with 1/3 of those 1792 languages. That work is still not complete. We don't have a report as yet. So we really don't know how to categorize those other mother tongues. So if you just add 1652 with 1792 or so, roughly 3,500 mother tongues.
Languages are living things and we need to be able to dynamicize the situations. There is the home language as well as English, or along with it the regional language. So the 3-language formula or the 4-language formula, the way we implement it will work. The problem is in the implementation.
Most of the languages that you are seeing today, which are known to be getting vanished or extinct or marginalized, are those where there are only elders who are speaking them. Children are no longer speaking them because intergeneration transfer is stopped. And that's a very sad state of affairs when your children don't speak to the grandmothers or grandfather or mother and father in their language, and they want them to communicate in the language that the children only know.
Because older people are no longer able to convey what they feel to younger generation, since the younger generation does not have the facility to appreciate those words. The moods and the shades of emotions get kind of lost over the younger generation, and that creates alienated humans, alienated generations.
So intergenerational transfer is always disruptive. And at the end of the disruption of intergenerational transfer is a feeling of isolation, because who am I? I have a name, but I have no song. When my stomach hurts, I have no language in which I can exclaim and say my stomach is hurting. I have not even a god or the memory of a tree, because everything has been taken away from me. But that's just patently untrue. Every human being is valuable, and every different experience of the world is valuable. And democracy must begin there, and language is our only connection.
Suppose you are traveling at some place where nobody speaks your own language. And if you find someone speaking in your own language, you feel happy because you find someone who is speaking in your own language. That is the bond, that is the attachment which a person has with his mother tongue. So we should not forget our mother tongue and always feel proud in talking in our own mother tongue.
Most languages in southern India are derived from the Dravidian language family, comprising some 70 languages. The Koraga language is an independent Dravidian language and is strongly influenced by Tulu, Kannada and Malayalam.
I am working for Soliga language under the Scheme for Protection and Preservation of Endangered Languages. It is a tribal community. The settlements number is 61 and 2,900 families located in that area. Now we are documenting their language. Part of that, we are going to produce dictionary, a grammar sketch and ethno-linguistics profile of the community.
I'm working on Yarava tribe located in Coorg district, Karnataka. Yarava is one of the prominent tribal community of Karnataka. The cultural songs still is not yet documented, and those songs only knows only 2 or 3 peoples, because these songs are like a oral traditions. It is a huge, and these present generations may not be able to sit and listen and sing. Government have not given much prominence to the tribal communities' languages. Because of that, they have spreaded or scattered in a different seasons. Some of them living in Tamil Nadu, some of them in Kerala, and some of them in Karnataka. One song I wanted to remember, and I want to say that that is a line goes on like this. Endu namu poganamu chamma tedichu poga. Endu namu poganamu, where shall we go? Chamma tedichu poga. Chamma means that our ancestors' lands or our kula systems we can find. Where we gone there is no food for us. Again we wanted to migrate some other places.
Oral traditions have been the guardian for tribal languages like Toda, Kota and Kurumba, spoken in the Nilgiri hills of Tamil Nadu.
There are small communities in the Nilgiris, and they have extraordinary ways of insisting that their language is preserved. Very small community, under 1,000 people. They preserve their language like that. But that language becomes just a language of the home. Because I still don't have it in school. There is no copy of the Constitution of India. There is no way that I can write an application in it.
One day, I was talking to a group of youngsters in Gujarat, and I said to them that their horizons must be higher than what they are. So I used the term Kshitij, which is a Marathi or Gujarati word for horizon. And after I had said that sentence, I felt that it had not reached them. So I asked them, do you know the meaning of the word Kshitij? They said, we have never heard it. Common words which one takes for granted appear to have left human memory.
Experts warn of the intrinsic link between potential language loss and the loss of identity and cultural wisdom.
So this country has been made of constant migration from various different parts. So the India has been a major corridor for migration from early onwards till now, and this has made India rich.
So why do speakers stop speaking their language. Well, often they stop speaking their language because the locales, the regions, the climates in which their language was a way of knowing and passing on information over the world, they are made bereft of it. So forced migration, migration due to poverty, to displacement, that is a very important reason why languages are lost.
Under the garb of development, many tribes are displaced from their original habitats to a particular place which they are not aware of.
The impact of language extinction extends to ecological knowledge, as is seen in the plight of the Nicobaris.
We are more familiar with biodiversity, with cultural diversity. We talk about these things, but language diversity is less emphasized as important to sustain or may take steps to sustain. But the truth is that one kind of diversity depends on the other. So there's an interconnection between these three kinds of diversity. When we have loss of diversity in language, then that affects biodiversity and cultural diversity as well.
Nicobaris, my latest research on Nicobaris tells me that Nicobaris are very self-sufficient. They had been very self-sufficient. The medicinal plants that they know about in the forest, in the seashores and other places have been life-sustaining. They don't need any medicines from us. They can treat their illnesses. They had been treating their illnesses and they are very self-sufficient and happy. I realized that the elderly people knew so much about the medicinal aspects of various plants growing in Mayabandar, from where they were displaced, and now they live in Strait Island where nothing of these plants or creepers grow. So they gradually, the younger generation completely lost the knowledge of the medicines that they could derive from the natural habitat. So ecology is very important for language. You see, language does not grow, as I said, in vacuum. It is associated with the environment. If you rob the environment, then the language, many of the lexicon, that is, many of the words in the languages are also robbed. And conversely, if you take away the language, then the knowledge about that where you're living, or the forest or the river, that is lost.
अब इस समय यानी 2023 में स्थिति थोड़ी बदली है। इसलिए बदली है क्योंकि 2020 में एक नई शिक्षा नीति आई और नई शिक्षा नीति में पहली बार किसी केंद्र की सरकार ने हमारी भाषाओं को महत्व दिया है। जरूरत यह है कि भारत की हर बोली, हर भाषा को भारत सरकार मान्यता दे। भाषाओं और क्षेत्रीय बोलियों का एक नेशनल रजिस्टर होना चाहिए।
Currently, what are the needs? The most important need is that we need to have a comprehensive linguistic survey of India, so we can create language atlas of India, and also we should know how many languages are being spoken, how many are these dialects, how many are having script, including our ancient scripts and languages. Only then we can make a policy or program that how many are extinct, how many are on verge of extinction, how many are in endangerment. So that data is very important.
The worst to suffer among the human languages, endangered, are the languages of the smallest communities who are without livelihood support in their own area, in their own language. So that is the situation. If anybody asks me, is any language endangered? My answer is all languages in the world face endangerment today as never before. Humans have spoken language for last 70,000 years. And it appears that humans have come close to a time of a complete language extinction.
According to the geneticists, Andamanis came to this island after the first migration that took place 70,000 years ago from Africa. So they are the remnants of the very first human migration. They should be considered the first set of languages of India. And they have lived in isolation all along till the early 20th century when Britishers made Andaman the penal colony. So their language is very old, the community is very old, the culture is very old. Alas, now it's all on the verge of extinction.
When a dialect is in decline, we lose the expression of a unique vision of what it means to be human. This documentary is a journey that explores dialects in decline across India, shedding a light on the urgent need for preservation and the interconnectedness of language, culture, and ecology.